Hello. um, welcome. You are playing back the VOD. We will be getting started soon. I usually put up chapter markers so you can navigate to where the stream actually starts if you like to do that. If you aren't subscribed, consider doing so. It helps grow my channel and brings more attention to these streams. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. The links are in the description below. And I usually send out notifications on Twitter when I'm going to stream. So if you are subscribed there or subscribed here on YouTube, you'll get notifications when that occurs. Gonna check and make sure the stream is working. Yep, looks like it is. Oops. Hello, welcome everybody. Also, to review, if you aren't aware, I run these streams to talk about health things, health issues, from my expertise. And you can chat along and ask me questions. I usually get to the questions later after I cover whatever pertinent topic. Today we're going to be talking about politics. Fun stuff. I know politics are always really great. Everyone loves politics. Hey, Violet. Welcome. Nice to see you again. You've come to a lot of my streams. It's nice. Thank you. I was gonna do something else. What was I gonna do? Hey, Mike. Mike is a staple here. He's sometimes been the only chatter helping me make content. Hey, Jay. Yeah, it's Friday too. I love Friday streams. Knock on wood. I'm gonna play Subnautica after this stream, if I have enough energy still then. Hi, Word. Happy Friday to you as well. Oh, and hey, Christian. Nice to see you too. Yes, everything is really great. I had such a nice day today. I got plenty of sunshine. Oh my god, I made myself, I have a hard time pronouncing it. Feijoada? Brazilian feijoada? Do you guys watch Tasting History on YouTube with Max Miller? Really good TV show about he highlights like a recipe and gives like the history behind that's like related to the recipe, the history that's related to the recipe. And like he'll do things like, you know, ancient medieval cooking, or like you know, like it's usually ancient medieval stuff. Ancient Greek and Roman things. Sometimes, you know, Asian fare. Like it's really neat, and the history is fun. Yeah, you guys, yeah, you've seen him. Yeah, he's fun. So his latest one was feijoada, Brazilian feijoada, and it's beans and pork basically cooked together really slowly, but not like American pork and beans is like a really like lazy version of this. This tastes very different, specifically black beans. And as I was making it too, I realized like part of the recipe, I didn't follow his recipe though. I just found one on the internet and made my own version. Because it takes a lot of time and I didn't have enough time. But one of the most important steps, you cook onions, you saute onions and garlic separately from the beans and meat, and then you add a little bit of beans to that onion and garlic and cook them together and then mash them up, and that's where the real flavor of the feijoada comes from. I was wondering what's made feijoada taste differently than like just normal meat and beans together, and it's that mashing and combination of the onion and garlic with the beans. Oh, it makes this really, really lovely, sweet, sulfury flavor that's really characteristic of that. Because I've had a lot of Brazilian cuisine before. Brazilian food is so good, and that's where some of the flavor comes from. It's that very specific combination of mixing the beans with the onions and garlic. It was so good. And then yeah. Anyway, I highly recommend fishwada. It's so good. Very, very, very good. Um, well, we have more viewers more quickly this time. Welcome. Okay, so we'll get started. So as the hey Fortnite, welcome. So as the title explains, um, I was wondering what to talk about today, and especially because, like, last time I talked in depth about alcoholism and addiction, and it was really long. I mean, it took me almost 2 hours just to get through what I was talking about. And there's so many aspects to it too that I just couldn't even address in that. For one, I really didn't explicitly discuss until the end that, like, that the same biochemical reasons that alcohol is addictive are the same as for drugs. It's universally the same condition. There's no difference. The drugs and alcohol are just the mode of treatment. Um, and and drugs usually work where alcohol works by actually antagonizing, destroying acetylcholine in the body. Drugs work by antagonizing the effects of acetylcholine or prevent its synthesis in excess in the first place. And so, and that really, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the difference is really minimal. The real problem is those underlying biochemical and neurological stresses that contribute to those problems. But like what I mentioned in that last stream too was like that of the concept of like a dry alcoholic or a non-using drug addict, where like people who have never had drug and alcohol dependencies can still have the disease, because it has nothing really to do with alcohol or drugs. Those are just the self-treatment methods that are addressing the underlying illness. And that condition is very much marked by heightened states of fear and anxiety. And any human can have this. Uh, just because we are human and we all have the same biology, um, we can all have traumatic experiences and sort of abuse and experiences of trauma and conditioning in our childhood that predisposes us to heightened states of fear and insecurity and anxiety. And then biochemical and environmental factors can make those worse as you get older, and also as your body starts to age and you start to get problems like gut dysbiosis and endocrine system dysregulation. And so it's a universal human experience to be afraid and to have anxiety about certain things. And the triggers though are what are unique, but the experience is not. So you can have people who are afraid of dogs. Maybe you're somebody who had a bad experience with a dog when you were growing up, and so anytime you saw a dog, as later as an adult, that triggers that traumatic experience for you. My sister and my brother, one time when they were really little, were playing on the beach, and a big dog came over and knocked them over, and they were by themselves at the time. They were building a sandcastle far away from our parents, and they've never been dog people. They don't really like dogs. They're not really super afraid of them, but like I love dogs. Like dogs are just so great. And but they haven't really cared for them. But I didn't never have an experience like that. They did. And but you can have lots of other fears. What are your guys' fears? You guys, you have nightmares at night, right? You have things that preoccupy your spare time and spare emotional energy when things are quiet, and you don't have your phone to distract you, or you're trying to go to sleep. Fear of being robbed, or bad people, or getting shot, or getting ill. A lot of people in here, or in the forums, in health forums, and on being and health stuff online, and a lot of reasons that people like try to be healthy are lots of fears of like getting old and being ill and getting sick. And I when I was younger, I didn't specifically have a fear of being sick, but I was definitely afraid of getting older and being fat and out of shape, because a lot of that was built into my fears of not being accepted and being rejected by people. And those are really common fears too: fear of acceptance, fear of rejection. um we try to do all sorts of things to try to be skinny and fit and in shape, and so people are attracted to us. And and that actually drives a lot of our decision making when it comes to health and wellness. And like, that can often actually also lead to harmful decisions. When I was younger, I did a lot of starvation and a lot of stress based, exercising and dieting and weight loss to try to lose weight. And that is absolutely something that led to me getting cancer and thyroid disease and starting to lose my hair and my libido and insomnia and the myriad of health problems that I have had in my life. But very specifically, right now in the world, there's a very specific state of political turmoil that seems to be driving everybody insane. And it's really awful, and like it's just it's making things really, not that this has never happened before, and I definitely want to avoid the mistake of going down the road where, like, being hyperbolic about this. um there have been far worse political calamity in human history, even in recent human history, that's not even close to this severity. I mean, the whole Cold War, and the civil rights movement, and Vietnam, and Korean War, and and then fuck World War II and World War One. I mean, there have been legit, like, far worse geopolitical tensions in the world than what we're having right now. It's like, if this is like the worst that this era is going to bring, it's actually pretty tame. But you wouldn't know that by like watching the news and media. And I like to I consume a fair bit of, like, a fair bit of that. I don't like politics, but a natural extension of my work is to be concerned with other people's well-being. And so when I, like, I need to stay up to date with at least a little bit with like current events and things that are going on. And like, I love watching Hassan Piker. He's Hassanabi on Twitch. He's so handsome. I mean, he's just devastatingly handsome. But he's actually really funny too. Like, he's got a really fun sense of humor, very sarcastic. He very fervently stands up for the undertrod and the downtrodden. Undertrod. He sticks up for people who are uh who lack political power, basically. um People try to often vilify him, and and give him a bad rep because he does stand up for things like universal health care. He's anti-capitalist, anti-colonization, that kind of stuff. And so, there's a lot of adversarial antagonism targeted toward him because of that. But he really goes out of his way to tackle issues and talk about issues that affect people who are politically powerless. And that's, really, I love that. And that and that's one of the reasons why I just really like him, because there's not a lot of people that really do that. A lot of people who get involved in politics are pundits who, either, regardless of which side of the political spectrum they're on, are basically shills for existing institutional powers, whether it's existing whether it's political operatives or government institutions, or business and economic institutions. um and uh so there's not a lot of that going on. But this also affects my work directly because I am often also targeted by people who, find out that I'm gay. And oh yeah, Sam Cedar's Majority Report too. Yeah. So I also get targeted by people just because I'm gay. And I often think to myself, I wonder, and actually I've had conversations or seen people comment on my work where they're really surprised that I'm not a liberal. I wouldn't identify myself as a specific political ideology, but I am on the left of things and on the progressive side. I want people to have, my work is centered around health and wellness. I want people to have access to medical care. I think people should be able to have good health and not be economically dependent on whether or not they can do that. The solutions to those problems are many and varied. The way that my work attempts to empower that is by educating people and giving them the tools that they can use to take care of their own health. My book costs like 30, the ebook is $36 and the print is 45 or 44, something like that. But like one of the things that I do in my book is make a concerted effort to pare down the number of supplements that you need to address health. Most of my book, I use the diet strategies in diet and environment to achieve, and they're often much more effective and profound than supplements. Because of the supplement industry, and it is an industry, let's be clear about that too. Most of the supplement industry is designed to make a profit from you by taking your money, and so they are not inherently invested in your well-being. They want to make money off of you. Some supplements can be helpful, but because of the supplement industry and the health industry, there is this prevailing idea among people that like my health problem, I haven't solved it yet because I just haven't found the right supplement yet. That's not how it works at all. Health is found, like no young people, like there's no like 10-year-olds running around all the 10-year-olds aren't running around really healthy because they are eating the right supplement. like human health is dependent first and foremost on your diet and environment. Hey, Care, welcome. And so, a supplement is never your health problems are never ever going to be solved by a specific supplement. Supplements are the way to use supplements to support your health is in addition to a good diet and environmental strategies, just to push things over up a little bit. Like, for instance, I recommend niacinamide in my book a lot. If you have a low metabolic rate, you cannot raise it just by taking niacinamide. You have to also support that with adequate carbohydrate intake, and getting enough sun exposure. Niacinamide will not make up for those problems. And a lot of people, especially people that get really frustrated and come to me, I'm always surprised by people who do sign up for coaching and have had my book for like a year or more. And they come to me frustrated, and the reason is because their diet still sucks. They're not eating enough calories. They're missing vitamin K in their diet or vitamin E, and they're not getting sunshine. And they're really disheartened because they're taking all these supplements and it's just not working. And yes, of course it's not working because that is not how it works. And so, extension of my work is to be generally concerned with people's well-being and trying to help people be healthy, regardless of their political affiliations. And so I get really perplexed when people come and attack me because I'm gay. It's like, I'm not your adversary just because I'm homosexual. Like, you believe that because you've been indoctrinated to believe that, but I don't care what your sexuality is. I'm trying to teach you about vitamin C and depression and sunlight exposure and how to get your libido working again and how to get pregnant and have a baby. I help a lot of straight people get pregnant. I've brought several babies into this world, even though I am not a breeder myself. So and I noticed this, actually, this was really interesting in my own personal experience. So several years ago, my family is extremely conservative, very religious. They're very homophobic. They're kind of racist. And several years ago, when Obama was president, Obama was working on the Affordable Care Act, and I didn't like it at all. Not for the same reasons people on the right did. I didn't think it. I didn't think it went far enough. I am in favor of single payer healthcare system. There's a lot of fear mongering around that, but I am the foremost expert on the human body and wellness, and like our medical system in the United States is abysmal. It's exploitative and predatory, and it's really not that great. But a lot of people on the right believe that it is really good, even when they have had really bad experiences, just because the public relations campaigns behind the medical industry has been really successful. Um, and But also, like, one of the funny things that people didn't realize is that, like, Obama was one of, like, the most conservative Democratic presidents elected in a long time. I mean, he was much more conservative than Clinton for sure. And the Affordable Care Act was actually modeled on Mitt Romney's uh, healthcare policies that he enacted in Massachusetts. It's actually a Republican policy. It is not a Democratic one. And I thought it was really funny too, because in California, Gavin Newsom adopted a similar model for the Affordable Care Act during Trump's presidency, even though still, like, that model is a Republican thing to force people to pay extra for healthcare, make them do that. That was Mitt Romney's strategy in Massachusetts, that then Obama adopted, and Gavin Newsom adopted, and I think it's a horrible policy. And But at the time that the Affordable Care Act was being crafted in Congress and with President Obama, my parents were exceptionally politically oriented, very conservative Republicans. Were really angry over the Affordable Care Act. And and one of the reasons, and so like one of the reasons that they were was because, well, and this happened actually, I'm sorry, this happened long after its passing. They didn't like it when it was being passed just because it was Obama, even though it was a Republican based policy. They just didn't like it because Obama was doing it. But when it was enacted, one of the biggest problems of that policy was that nobody anticipated the stratospheric acceleration of insurance premiums that would occur from a sudden influx of uninsured people coming into the market and getting long overdue healthcare procedures. My own mother was one of these people. She had several surgeries that she had been putting off. Surgeries, not just like little like casual doctor's visits, like full on huge surgeries that took several weeks each to recover from before she went through another one. And she did this on the Affordable Care Act, even though she was a Republican. They were almost not going to even sign up for it. But I told, I was like, yeah, it's terrible, but like, there's penalties if you don't sign up. You guys do need medical care. You haven't had health insurance for like 10 years. You should. So they did. And then they had all these surgeries, and their premiums, and not just because they had surgeries, but everyone's premiums in the entire country, especially that demographic, went from, in the range of like, like $400 to $600 a month to like six. My parents' premium went up to something like $1,600 a month. I don't remember the exact figure, but it was around $1,500, $1,600 a month, which was more than their rent at the time. And this happened during the Obama administration, and so the momentum behind Donald Trump's candidacy, and this is a whole other freaking thing too, because not a lot of people are aware that Hillary Clinton helped fund Donald Trump's campaign initially, because is dark horse the right term, the extreme candidate. There's been a ongoing practice of the Democrats funding hateful extreme right-wing candidates, so that because they think it's easier to beat them in the general. But that it's been backfiring on them, and it's been funding hate, and so a lot of this political climate is actually the fault of like Clinton era Democrats, who are still doing this as a strategy, funding extreme right wing, hateful, bigoted candidates as a strategy to win the general. And it's backfired. People, is it Claire McCaskill, I think, was a big champion of this, and she lost to a candidate that she had funded. So, like, anyway, it's absurd. But, like, anyway, so a lot of the campaign tone at the time of the Trump Clinton election was this idea that that it was right versus left, and if you voted for Trump, you were a racist, and if you voted for Clinton, you were a good liberal. But that wasn't really happening, because a lot of people on the right didn't want to vote for Donald Trump, but the alternative was to vote for somebody who would continue to keep their insurance premiums at $1,600 a month. And no one was addressing that. Like, Clinton refused to campaign in several states. She didn't really even talk about the Affordable Care Act in this depth. She definitely did not recognize the financial burden that it had on people on the right, and on the left too. But people on the left, though, very often will swallow economic struggles for social justice issues, but people on the right won't do that. Even if, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're racist, although there are a lot of racists, on the right. One of the biggest reasons that Trump won was just because he had campaigned to eliminate this extra tax that a huge portion of the American public had been saddled with during the Obama administration. And so there was this real disconnect between the tenor of political tensions in the country. And a lot of people, especially on the left, didn't understand that this was going on, especially because people on the left tend to be a little bit more affluent and educated and have, like, health plans covered by, your employer, or, so, and you don't see the direct financial burden of it. But, for all of us, health is the ultimate paramount issue in our lives. You basically don't have anything if you don't have health. If you're gonna die, there's no point in like caring about any other things in life. Like, your focus becomes on being well. And then for a lot of our fears and insecurities are based around being well, and we even taking it to it's extreme, like being super fit and staying young forever, which is not possible anyway. So a lot of fears that exist in politics are very often related to our physical bodies, as in being physically well, being healthy, having access to healthcare, because it is the ultimate concern for being alive and being a human being. We fear death, we fear illness, and we want to be healthy, and we want to have access to the things that make us healthy. It's why people will spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on supplements a month, because we think that it's helping us, and and it helps satiates the fear. It helps subvert the fear that we are having about our health, even if it isn't actually doing it. Just being able to take action on your health can often be very cathartic, and it can lower your stress hormones, and feeling like we're healthy, can have even a lot more of a cathartic effect than actually being healthy. It's one of the reasons why, like, a lot of people think that just being skinny means you're healthy. You can delude yourself into thinking that you're healthy because you are really super lean and you can see your abdominal lines. But there is a lot of reasons that is not actually healthy. People who have a hard time putting on weight are much more likely to die from a catastrophic sudden illness, like cardiovascular, like a heart attack or something, or a stroke. And it's because you don't have fat on your body, because the fat is a reservoir of energy that the body draws from during times of stress. And the fats that our body also retains are some of the more stable, like palmitic acid and stearic acid and oleic acid, are some of the more stable fats. And so during a medical emergency, if you have enough stearic acid or palmitic acid stored on your body, when those are released during your stress event, they actually help to protect your cells. But if you don't have those, then you die, because they're not available for your body to leverage. But there's another aspect to all of this that's even more elusive, that a lot of people don't understand, which is the function of the endocrine system and its relation to fear and political ideology. There are studies out that show that more ill, metabolically ill, and dietarily stressed populations are more likely to lean toward the right in politics. And this is also one of the reasons why a lot of health forums also tend to be populated by a lot of misogynistic and racist and homophobic and otherwise xenophobic people, is because the state of endocrinological health that underlies metabolic disease that we're trying to address in the first place also heighten hormones of fear and anxiety. And when we as human beings are afraid, we are also irrational, and we tend to do be more reactionary and impulsive, and we don't have the mental luxury of empathy when we are hurting physically really badly. Um, this is one of the ironies in my work, is that the work that I've done over I would make a good dad. Oh, thanks, Bev. That's really sweet of you. I'll be a parent one day. It'll happen. So um uh so one of the ironies of my work is that in studying how the endocrine system works and how hormones work and why people get ill, I it's often become very clear to me, like, why people are politically antagonistic to others. And a lot of it has to do with the effect of high stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol on the brain, and how fear affects our ideologies and our behavior, and how it can very often get in the way of socially positive moral behavior. Like, one, for instance, so my parents, like a lot of people in this in the modern world, and in the Western cultures especially, have been metabolically ill for a very long time. Ever since they were young, they've had ideas about health and diet that are very destructive: starvation, working out excessively, basically abusing your body, and without great results. Yo-yo, just like chronic dieters, like dieting doesn't work. You yo-yo, your weight yo-yos, you can lose some weight, but it comes right back, because that's how stress causes weight gain. But that stress also affects your brain and your brain function and your feelings. um uh as I was like studying cortisol and adrenaline, I realized that a lot of phobias are also caused by really high stress hormones. So, for instance, okay, so let's take an example. Let's take two people who are have issues with flying. Because flying is, or heights, or sharks, deep water. A lot of people have very specific phobias or fears like that. If you take somebody who has a healthy endocrine system, whose hormone expression is not excessive or imbalanced, when they have to go fly somewhere, they buy a ticket, they go to the airplane, they might have a little bit of anxiety. And I'm also talking from experience too, because like when I used to fly, it was fun. It was like, I was younger, it was a little bit thrilling, and I was a little bit nervous, but it was fun. Like, you get to go up in the air, and you get to go to a new place really, in a short period of time. But as people get metabolically ill, what happens is, when you encounter otherwise mundane or trivial stimuli for anxiety or antagonism, um, your endocrinological response to that becomes more exaggerated, because you're metabolically ill. Your body does not possess the adequate supplies of healthy hormones like pregnenolone and testosterone and progesterone to feel relaxed and normal and empowered in those situations. And what happens instead is that you have an exaggerated release of adrenaline and cortisol, the fight or fight hormones, right? Um, and what that does is that makes that experience far more intense in fear and anxiety for that person than it is for somebody who has a healthy endocrine system. And this is the reason why people have phobias like flying and deep water and the nighttime, or spiders. is because when they encounter that stimulus, because of the imbalance in their endocrine system, there is a greater release of adrenaline and cortisol, and it has a more outsized impact on their tissues, including the brain and your heart, and your lungs. Your heart starts beating a lot faster, and your lungs, and you start breathing a lot faster, but that paralyzing fear is not because they're psychologically more afraid of the flying or the spiders or whatever, snakes or deep water. It's because the endocrine system is not healthy, and the stress reaction to that then is outsized. Now, this same problem occurs in politics, and it drives political conflict because there is no bigger stimulus of the fight or flight response in a human being than other human beings. It's why if you're out minding your own business, let's say you're going grocery shopping, and then all of a sudden, like, someone at the grocery store just randomly attacks you, and you get so flustered and you can hardly speak because everything is just surging. Every video of a Karen this has happened to. The fight or flight response, because other people are the biggest triggers of the fight or flight response in us. Those encounters with other human beings trigger more stress associated hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, higher release of those during those encounters than other things, more than so like one time when I was like a teenager, and I was walking home from junior high, and there was this alley behind our house. We lived in Salt Lake City at the time, so I wasn't like I was not even close to the wilderness. I was walking in the alley up to behind our house, and underneath the shed right by our driveway was I heard a little scratching noise, and I turned to look, and there was a skunk. And its cute little head popped out from underneath this shed, but I saw the stripes, and I saw a skunk, and my heart rate just like picked up, and I freaked out, and I ran backward away from there, and I went all the way around the long way to the front. And I was really surprised at the time how scared I was of a skunk, because skunks aren't like dangerous, but they're just really smelly. But it was also being startled by this noise, because like I hadn't expected it, and there was like a creature right there. But a lot of the encounters that I've had with antagonistic people over my life have had a far more debilitating reaction in terms of the fight or flight response than that experience. I like, for one time when I was like probably 22. No, yeah, I was probably out. Yeah, toward the end of being 21, probably 22. I was looking for an apartment. I was homeless at the time. I'd gotten a job, and I'd earned some money, and I went into an apartment hunting service, and I had gave them a deposit to find apartments. And then I found an apartment, but they called me, and they said that they knew they hadn't applied me, but they knew that I wouldn't be accepted, and because of my credit and lack of credit history and stuff like that. And so they just recommended that I find another place, and they would refund my deposit. And I said, great. So the next day I went into the business, and I went up to, and it was like this small indie business. And the guy that ran it also owned it. And he was like, he looked like maybe he was like in his 30s. And I went up and I said, hey, I'm here to get my deposit. And he started screaming at me and told me to get out of his business before he called the police. And it was one of the weirdest experiences of my life, because I might have been like tired or like cranky, but I didn't say like, hey, you're a stupid business. Like, you didn't do a good job, and I want my deposit back. I literally just said, hey, I'm here for my deposit back. And he literally screamed at me to get out of there, like, or he was going to call the police. And I later realized as I grew up that like he had reacted that way because I towered over him. I didn't know this at the time, but there's a lot of guys in the world who are just immediately threatened by men who are bigger than them, because there's this unconscious triggering of their trauma as a kid and being smaller than their dad. And he was literally screaming at me because my presence just was like reminding him of this trauma he'd had as a child, that, from from being from his big dad. But it was so horrible though. Like, I had never had anyone threaten to call the police on me. My own dad called the police. He actually called the police on me once. I tell that story in my second book. But I never had anybody threaten to call the police on me, and for no good reason either. Like, I literally, like, he had my money. Like, I was not in the wrong for asking for my money back. They were, but then what I didn't know too is that their company policy was just it would just get refunded to my bank account. But he didn't explain that. He just said to get out of there or he'd call the police, and it was so weird. But that was far more scary than encountering the wild skunk unexpectedly. And we have these reactions with other people all the time. You have them even with people that you are familiar with. When you have an argument with your boyfriend or girlfriend or your wife or your husband or your cousin or your mom and dad, and your heart rate is going, and you can't hardly think, and your mouth, your lips feel like they tense up and you can't even form words. Like, that is the fight or flight response. And it is most strongly triggered by other human beings. And so one of the reasons that we have these political conflicts as human beings is because other groups of human beings, in an evolutionary sense, are some of our biggest threats to our survival and well-being. Throughout all of human history, groups of humans all fought and warred with each other, killing each other, taking from each other. And but this happened long before we developed, societies and culture. I mean, like ingrained, like, in depth. And our literal biology is designed in anticipation of conflict with other human beings. This actually also underlies racism, and I talk about this in my second book a lot too. And one of the reasons that we have not been able to overcome racism, and because people largely consider it to be a product entirely of an educational nature, like children being taught by their parents to be racist. But that is not true. Racism taps into our fundamental fear of others that underlies human biology, that triggers the fight or flight response. And because people don't recognize that that is a factor, it doesn't ever get addressed. And so things like xenophobia and racism and other divisive geopolitical political conflict keeps always repeatedly coming up, because people do not understand or recognize the endocrinological contribution to geopolitical conflict. So because other human beings are the greatest threats to our well-being, those fears underlie political divisiveness. And it's really funny too, because if most people were able to actually have like a rational conversation with people they believe to be their adversary, there's so much more common ground. And and I'm saying this as a gay guy who has been repeatedly marginalized and ostracized in American society by my own family and friends and culture and communities that I grew up in. Most of these problems are errors in communication and people not understanding that other people want the same things that we want. Everybody wants safety and security, economic opportunity, friends and family, and and good food. And that's basically it. Like, people don't, a lot of the reasons that people on the right are xenophobic or racist is because they believe that other human beings are a threat to their ability to have good economic opportunity, stable families, good food to eat, money in their bank account. Whether or not we are correct about our fears is debatable, but the underlying motivations for these things are all the same for all human beings. And the reason why we have such volatile political conflict at times is because we start to believe that other people are threats to those wants and needs that we have as individual human beings. Then on top of that, if you have a disrupted endocrine system because your health is challenged, your reaction to those conflicts becomes even more severe because it triggers these fears that are associated with the release of adrenaline and cortisol. Just like somebody who has a phobia of flying or spiders, when you feel like your well-being is under attack, your feelings of stress that result from that are more intense and more difficult to handle. And so then when you go to the polls, you're not really concerned about social justice issues because you're afraid of being able to put food on the table or pay for the expensive medical care that you think that you need or do need, and or whether or not you're going to be okay. And the failure to recognize that underlies political divides, because very often, like, you see that, you actually even see this with, like, the recent abortion issues. Abortion polls very high in this country, like 70% of voters all want reproductive rights. It's a myth that that it's very divisive, or there's not a political consensus on that. And then even people that are anti-abortion also, like, this triggers a visceral fear that they have, that is stimulated by that issue. Most people who are anti-abortion project themselves as the little baby embryo being aborted and imagining themselves torn to pieces and bloody on a operating table and thrown in the trash. And yeah, if you're a grown, actual living human being and that happens to you, that would be horrible. And that's why anti-abortion activists have those feelings, is because imagining abortion for them triggers intense feelings of fear and anxiety. And that's also why you don't see them advocating for child care, access to childcare, and improvements in medical care and childhood poverty, because their actions are motivated by personal fears and insecurities. And when you have an unhealthy endocrine system because of dietary stress, because of environmental stress, because of lack of access to good healthcare and good food, and exposure to toxic endocrine disrupting chemicals and stuff like that, when you have fears and anxieties like this, they become more intense, and then those fuel worse political divides and tension because of the effect of the endocrine system on our experience as a human being. And so, for instance, and so my parents don't, like, my parents just, like, default think that I'm some liberal Democrat, and I fucking hate the Democrats and Joe Biden. Like, they're so fucking Joe Biden is, like, one of the primary authors of most of the political problems that we have in this country. He was a huge champion of the drug war and overpopulation of caused overpopulation of the prisons. He's written many policies that have caused the very problems that we're dealing with right now. Inequality and environmental issues, and and lots of stuff like that. And, like, I don't like that, but my parents don't know that, because they don't even care. They don't have any interest in me, because they just by default think that I'm an adversary because I'm gay. And but they also have pretty intense, serious metabolic disease that disrupts their endocrine system. So when they have thoughts of, like, oh, my son turned out gay and he's politically in opposition to me, they have really heightened sense of fear and anxiety reactions that come from that because of their poor metabolic health. So, and then all of his experiences too, like, when I do, I will turn off Hassan when I start to feel too triggered by political conflict, because in all of us, the activation of hormones of adrenaline and cortisol bring unpleasant experiences. And if I don't need to hear something or listen to something, I'll just turn it off, because, I know I'm very well informed. I know what's going on in the country. I don't need to consume that entertainment. But oppositely too, this is another reason why, like, a lot of people do engage in those media outlets. Like one of the reasons that my mom watches Fox News is because it's anger entertainment. It's the thrill of being angered by something becomes alluring. So my mom watches it because of the feelings that the show makes her feel. She likes feeling angry. She likes feeling righteous anger, because adrenaline is stimulating. It's for any reason that anyone is an adrenaline junkie. When people say adrenaline junkies, it should also include interpersonal conflict, especially romantic relationships. One of the reasons that we get into arguments repeatedly with a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend is because it triggers adrenaline, and that adrenaline is a sense of excitement, especially if we feel bored, or or lethargic, and if you're metabolically ill and your metabolic rate is low. A surge of adrenaline can be really exciting, even if we don't like the conflict, even if we really don't like arguing all the time. Sometimes it's our only source of stimulation. And our brains are in this dark little bowl in our head. They like, we experience the world around us through these sensory filters. Your eyes and your touch and the sound, and they're all actually just like filtered through our brain. So our brain doesn't really directly interact with the environment. And if you are metabolically ill, um it can feel like you're walking around in a fog and not really experiencing life. So something that's really exciting and triggering, like political or interpersonal conflict, can come along and make you, and kind of be an antidote to that. It can wake you up and make you feel like there's a purpose in life. um I tell people this actually quite a bit, that life is actually really boring. Like if you're mentally healthy and things are fine, like, unless you're like, entrepreneurial, like, there's not a lot to do in life. you know it can get boring. Like, what do you do with your life? Do you pursue the corporate ladder path? Go make a lot of money? I mean, one of the reasons that, like, a lot of men, like, start to neglect their families and spend a lot of time at work is because life can be boring. And if you're not satisfied with the mundane things in life, with waking up every morning, eating 3 meals a day. If you get bored with mundane things like that, because you're not able to really interact and connect with life, like, it can get really boring. And so it can be really fun and exciting to engage in political conflict. And then again, if you're also metabolically ill, that becomes even more heightened because your body expresses even more adrenaline and cortisol than someone who has a stabilized endocrine system. So anyway, so, like, this plays a great deal into alcoholism and addiction. And there's a reason why politics often permeate circles of recovery, is because the deranged endocrine system that accompanies alcoholism and addiction also is very, very sensitive to political conflict. You'll never get bored playing the guitar. Yeah. Actually, I bought a guitar, Mike, right when I first got sober, because I played the piano growing up, and I really missed music, but I couldn't afford a piano nor take one around with me. So I thought, well, why don't I start learning the guitar? So I bought one and I started learning it. Um, and then I didn't continue with it, though, because my life was still not stable and I had to move around a lot, and it was really frustrating, and I gave it up. But one day, I might actually. I also got discouraged because if you can't really learn the guitar as an adult, learning your bones set too much, and it's hard to get your wrist around. I really couldn't get my wrist to obey. But anyway, so this plays like a big deal into drug and alcohol addiction too, because political conflict can be very triggering for drug and alcohol addicts. Because of this same thing I'm talking about, because of endocrinological health. When your endocrine system is very sensitive to stress, it's very, very difficult to handle the feelings that come with that, because hormones are our feelings. When you have a rush of adrenaline, it's excitement and anger, and cortisol is anxiety, and fear, and serotonin is remorse and guilt. And so uh, so as you treat your metabolism and you get healthier, you eat consistently, you get enough sunshine, you get the vitamins and nutrients that I talk about in my books, you resolve psychological trauma. Psychological trauma is such a trigger for these problems. Most of us, our political ideologies originate from our experiences of trauma, and not necessarily because we uh like actually, so I was watching before the stream, while I was waiting for it to start, I was actually watching a clip compilation of Jerma that had popped up on my feed. And I can't tell you how much I love Jerma. He's amazing. And Jerma 98, spell of the J, Jerma 985, for those of you that don't know. He's so funny and so wonderful. And it reminded me of when I was a child. When I would act silly, my mother would get mad at me and tell me not to act silly. And it was really weird too, because when I was a kid, like I thought it would be fun, like to be an actor. We did this one. We had a play in sixth grade, and I got assigned to do the set because I drew art. But I didn't want to do set design. I was like doing set design by myself while everybody was up on stage practicing together. And I felt left out and alone, and I wanted to be part of that. So I asked my teacher if I could be, and she found a part for me in the play, and it was so much fun. But like, but I remember my mom telling me that I should not be weird. And that's such a strange thing to say to a child. Like, why would you tell children not to be themselves? The reason is rejection, because as human beings, we require other human beings for a lot of our needs, to have friends, to be safe, to be supported. You know, we need family members and society to provide those needs that we cannot provide for ourselves. So as human beings, we have fear of being rejected that's very, very intense, because it's related, and evolutionarily, those fears are related to our survival as an individual. And so we have these instincts to avoid being unique or avoid being ourselves and drawing attention to ourselves, or doing anything that can risk rejection by the group. And, you know, my mother was a beauty queen. And my mom was one of the first, my mom was a Barker's Beauty. She was one of the first like models on The Price is Right with Bob Barker back in the day. And like my mom had like a public facing life, but it was one very regal, stoic, you know, beauty. Like, you know, don't be weird. And like, and the funny thing too is that like I'm the only fun person in my family, and I'm not even that fun, but like nobody in my family is fun. They're all so serious. And like, it's because like, the reason is because of my mom's own personal trauma when she was a child, when her mother was, you know, her mother was like, getting mad at her for being unique and weird because she wanted her daughter to be a beauty queen. So my mom always had to be reserved, you know, and stoic. And, you know, this is by far not unique to, you know, them, but like, and this is actually, I mean, well, but yeah, but this is actually really widespread too. This kind of idea that like, especially women need to be composed and poised, and like, you know, you can never fart and do weird things. And like Jerma has so much fun in his life. Like, he's silly all the time. He was up there doing that green screen stream and just acting like a total jerk. And like, it was so fucking funny. And, you know, it just made me, you know, realize, like, understand that, like, you know, when my mother told me that I wasn't allowed to be silly, she really she really suppressed this part of me that found enjoyment with other people. And you know, but these fears of rejection that motivate those kinds of behaviors cause us far more harm than they end up benefiting us. All they end up doing is trying to control the thing that we're afraid of, but they don't actually give us anything. So when you're working with your metabolic health and your psychological health, and if you're experiencing a lot of anxiety about politics or political triggers, or fear in general, fear of other people, or fear of your finances, or fear of, you know, losing your job. If those feel difficult to handle, a lot of it has to actually do with your metabolic health and your endocrine health. And so, and first off, like, the first thing to do is just go eat something really good. Just go eat some fucking sugar. Go eat some ice cream, you know, eat something really yummy. Sugar is one of the most powerful ways to bring down adrenaline and cortisol, because they are also triggered by low blood sugar. I'm endlessly amazed when I am working with people who struggle with mental illness, and they very often don't eat food. They just don't eat. There are fears of, you know, being skinny and weight gain and acceptance and being sexy and the control that those things can bring with it, that they don't eat food. And then you're more susceptible, though, to fear and anxiety because you're not eating enough sugar. So if you go eat something good first, that will bring down those hormones a lot. And then the more consistent you are with your eating and maintaining your blood sugar, the less intense that those fears will be. You can do other things too, like taking vitamin C and pregnenolone. Those can really help bring down your stress hormones too. One particular trigger for a lot of people is social anxiety. But social anxiety is a very specific symptom of pregnenolone deficiency. And when I was first recovering in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was no longer drinking to deal with my anxiety for going into group situations, I suddenly had a lot of anxiety when I would want to go to a party or something. I would get gripped by this social anxiety that was so intense that I sometimes didn't go. And it was the first time in my life that I avoided social get-togethers, because before that I had always had alcohol to do that. Because alcohol, antagonizes acetylcholine. It brings down your stress hormones, but I didn't have that anymore. But having very intense social anxiety around social get-togethers is a very specific symptom of pregnenolone deficiency, because when you are pregnenolone deficient, you are more likely to express cortisol. And so one thing that you can do before a party, or even going to work, you can take pregnenolone, and that can really help take a big edge off of fears and anxiety like that. So anyway, so there's a lot of factors that go into these things like that, and politics is very much driven by poor metabolic health, and political conflict is usually more of a superficial distraction from the real underlying health problems that a lot of us are actually dealing with. And so if you in turn, instead of focusing on those things, you in turn turn your focus onto your own metabolic health and trying to help heal your endocrine system, which by the way will also make you more fit and better looking anyway in the first place, then those experiences will become far less intense, and you will be able to enjoy your life more. And then if you also address your history of psychological trauma surrounding these things, you can completely eradicate triggers for those kinds of fears and anxiety by caring for your own mental health. I specifically talk about that in my second book. So anyway, I think I covered all of that like I wanted to talk about. So I'll start answering all your other questions. Care, do I have a good sweet or candy recipe I like? You're trying to expand your sweet treats to take with me. Yes, I fucking love taffy. I cannot tell you how much I love taffy. Taffy is really good because you can't make good taffy with poor ingredients. A lot of candy can be cheated and is made with bad fats like soy and palm oil. If you make taffy, the taste of taffy kind of depends on the fat that's used. So taffy tends to be made out of coconut oil. And so you can more often find higher quality taffy products around, and then it's just so chewy and yummy. Oh God. So yeah, I love taffy. I have taffy with me a lot. I also like a lot of dried sweetened fruit. Like I have dried papaya that's sweetened, or things like that, and chocolate. I just fucking love chocolate. So safe starches for those recovering from addiction. I don't really like that term, safe starches. Do you mean safe starches in terms of weight gain, or do you mean safe starches in terms of like inflammatory wheat? If you're using the term safe starches in reference to weight, stop doing that. That is a body dysmorphic behavior. There's no such thing as a unsafe starch, except for wheat, and wheat is not bad because of its starch content. It's bad because of its gluten content, which is inflammatory. And usually also wheat flour is usually fortified with extra iron, which is also destructive to our metabolic health. But don't talk about safe starches in terms of weight gain. That's body dysmorphia talking. That's bad dietary habits and negativity about your body. It is almost impossible to raise the metabolic rate without requiring starch. This is actually one of the points of contention I have with Ray Peat. He actually quite often talks kind of negatively about starches, but then he also talks about how important glucose is for a lot of our metabolic needs. And it is impossible to get enough glucose in your diet without a source of starch. You cannot get your metabolic rate up where it needs to be with only sources of sucrose and other non-starch sources of glucose. It's really, really difficult to do that. On top of that, a lot of sources of starch are also sources of indigestible carbohydrate to make short-chain fatty acids with, or high in potassium, like root vegetables. Starch is usually necessary in order to actually recover from addiction. In addiction and alcoholism, I specifically recommend to avoid wheat because inflammatory foods raise hormones of torpor. And many of the symptoms of somebody actually asked this question as a comment on my alcoholism podcast. I wasn't very explicitly clear about where the rise in acetylcholine comes from. It comes from childhood trauma, but it ultimately it's the damage to the dorsal raphe nucleus that causes the high acetylcholine expression. Because I made this comparison that acetylcholine is a lot like a defibrillator. It's your nervous system trying to keep your cells active. And the only reason that is happening is because your metabolic rate is low. And the metabolic rate is low because the dorsal raphe nucleus has been damaged by trauma, either from environmental and psychological trauma or also from nutritional trauma. And usually it's a combination of all those factors. Excuse me, I need some water. So anything that continues to promote inflammation makes it more difficult to recover. So avoiding wheat is also very helpful in addiction and alcoholism. And again, and if you guys are struggling with this or you know people who are, you need to read the chapter and article on alcoholism and addiction, because I can't remember everything in a podcast to talk about. This is only to make you guys aware of that stuff, and you should follow the writing as a guide. So wheat, because it's inflammatory, raises torporific hormones, and so it can be very difficult to recover from that if you are continuing to eat wheat. So substitute that with other sources of starch, like yummy root vegetables or legumes and beans that are properly prepared, or spelts and einkorn yumminess. Cookies, made out of spelt. Like, make yourself a huge batch of like oatmeal raisin cookies or chocolate chip cookies to have all the time. If as part of your recovery from alcoholism and addiction, you incorporate cookies, you will have a lot more success. And I mentioned this too in that podcast, all of us who have alcoholism or addiction have one of our biggest hurdles to getting well is learning how to actually enjoy ourselves. That's why we use alcohol and drugs, is because we don't actually know how to enjoy ourselves. We use the drugs and alcohol to do that. And when you don't have them, then it's very difficult to enjoy yourself. And one of the ways that you can do that is by, making a batch of cookies. If you just make cookies for yourself, so they're around all the time, you will recover. You'll be a lot better. Thanks again for that, Bev. That's sweet of you to say. Care, the more calories, the better. A good rule of thumb for recovering health. Yes. There is no such thing as too many calories. If you are insatiably hungry, that's usually a symptom of pathogenic infection, but also dysregulation of the transsulfuration pathway. I don't really talk about this in my book. It is in my upcoming update that's going to be released soon, where we have too much methionine and cysteine in our diet and too little B vitamins, and that results in excess homocysteine. And then homocysteine is highly activating, and then that stimulates wasteful caloric consumption, which motivates excess eating. But if you avoid calories to address that, all you end up doing is driving your stress hormones higher, which makes you more stressed out and ironically even more likely to eat excess. And it just becomes a self-defeating habit. And then this is one of the reasons why those of us who struggle with alcoholism and addiction also struggle with alcoholism and addiction, is because we don't eat enough. Because when you don't eat enough, your adrenaline and cortisol rises, and it hurts your body. It really physically and mentally hurts. It is your body's way of telling you that you're starving yourself and you need to eat something. So, you need to err on eating enough calories, on the side of eating enough calories. We do not gain weight because of excess caloric intake. If any of you were watching Hassan today, he often will spout total untruths about weight loss that he's just heard from the internet and from personal trainers. and they don't know any about biology at all. Um, uh, you can lose weight from restricting calories, but it is not healthy. It destroys your body. It tears down your lean muscle tissue. It destroys your nervous system and your brain health. It's not healthy. It's very, very destructive on your body. To lose, I did a podcast on healthy weight loss. To lose weight healthy, you have to address, in a healthy way, you have to address pathogenic infection, i.e. gum disease, H. pylori, Clostridium difficile in your gut, and get enough sunlight and calories and things like short chain fatty acids, like I talk about in my book. So anyway, yeah, always err on eating too many calories. Is the untreated rotten tooth enough to sustain poor health? Yes, it is. Oh wait, Bev, I skipped over a question of yours. Yes, but the thing is, you never have just a untreated rotten tooth. If you have any kind of severe gum disease, it will be all over your mouth. It's just that you're not really aware of it. The oral bacteria are actually really neat in the sense that they cloak their presence. By producing hydrogen sulfide, they actually inhibit the pain response. You can think of it like this. If you get even the tiniest little paper cut on the end of your little finger, it will still hurt like a bitch. You know, you bump that against, and you can't even like grab something because you're like, oh, I got this little tiny fucking paper cut, and it just hurts like a bitch. The reason that hurts is because it's infected with bacteria. But when bacteria infect our gums, it doesn't hurt at all. You can have like several rotten teeth and your gums just only kind of mildly ache. And the reason that is true, like even if you have tooth bleeding, gum bleeding, but your gums are like bleeding, literally bleeding. Any other part of your body bleeds, it hurts. Even when you're a woman and you have a period, it hurts. But you can brush your teeth and they can bleed like fucking crazy and it doesn't even hurt. And the reason for that is because those bacteria evolved over millions of years alongside our evolutionary ancestors to inhibit the pain response so that they could infect and live inside of our gums undetected. And so a lot of people put off oral and dental care because it doesn't really hurt that bad and they can just ignore it. But the problem is when you are infected with those pathogens, our evolutionary biology knows that it is only a matter of time before you lose all of your fucking teeth and you can no longer chew anymore. So it starts packing on fat and lowering the metabolic rate so that you can survive as long as possible without any teeth. Of course, we have access to dentists now and you can get teeth replacement, so you don't really die that way. But that is why our body reacts to those pathogens in that manner, is because your body knows that there are pathogens that are going to eat and dissolve your teeth, and then you won't be able to eat any food. So that's why we get fat. So yes, and it's not, fat is the aesthetic part. It's the destruction from oral bacteria is that they catalyze cardiovascular disease and cancer, and so it's impossible to recover from any metabolic issue if you have gum disease and tooth decay. And so you absolutely have to address those. In fact, I would say that if you have any neglected dental care, that you go and do it immediately. If you have calculus buildup, or you have infected teeth or recurrent cavities, or you have gum bleeding, just go get a dental cleaning. Don't get x-rays. X-rays are harmful. They're not also even necessary, unless if it is necessary, then get an x-ray. X-ray radiation is actually harmful to our cells. So just say, no, thank you. I don't want an x-ray, but I just want a tooth cleaning. Go get a tooth cleaning. Getting your teeth cleaned can really, really jumpstart your recovery process if you have bad oral health. Because you're literally just swallowing those bacteria, and they also have access to your cardiovascular system and they're circulating in your bloodstream. So if you clean your teeth, if you get your teeth cleaned and get the oral disease taken care of, and in my upcoming book update, I will have a lot more information on how to holistically care for them. But don't put it off. Just go do it. Even if you use my methods, it takes several months to get over oral disease. Just go to the dentist and get them cleaned, and then you're done. And then you can make like 3 or 4 months of progress in just like one day. So go do that. Bev, you said you wish you could eat more calories. Any reason why it takes 4 or 5 hours after waking to build up an appetite? Yes, Bev. Okay, so let's pretend that you're an evolutionary human being and you wake up in the morning and you're in your cave, you know, and there's like not a lot of like resources, like maybe winter is coming on, and like you get up and like, but you're so hungry that it hurts just to stand, even like you just don't even want to go look for food. So you don't. So you just like lay there and die. One of the reasons that we aren't hungry immediately when we wake up is so that we can actually go look for food. So like evolutionarily, if hunger always was debilitatingly painful, um, you would ironically not actually really have the energy or ability to go get food. So we don't. Like, because a lot of us like have ideas about eating, like, you know, that it's a liability. We'll be like, oh, I'm not really hungry for breakfast, so I'll just like skip it. That'll save me some calories. But the problem is that from the moment you stop eating, your body starts to release stress hormones. That's how our body maintains blood sugar. When you eat carbohydrates, your body circulates some of that of that sugar that you've eaten, but most of it goes either toward glucose storage in glycogen, which is the human equivalent of starch in plants, or it gets deposited as fat. And then as you go in between meals, your body slowly releases either the stored glucose in glycogen or the fat on your body. And then the longer you go without eating, the higher those hormones get, because it's their job to release those nutrients. And so because we're asleep at night and not actually doing anything, nighttime is one, and but also because actually like light lowers those hormones as well. So like the darkness also increases them. But nighttime is generally the time of day when your stress hormones are highest, and are highest actually in the morning when you wake up. That is, of course, unless you don't eat, then they continue to rise beyond that, and they can get really catastrophic. And remember, so the way that it works is adrenaline is released first, and adrenaline releases adrenaline releases glucose from glycogen storage. Then when you run out of glucose, and your blood sugar really tanks, then your body starts, or it's not when you run out, it's close to when you start running out. Then your body releases cortisol. And then the job of cortisol is to make up for deficits in dietary carbohydrate. And it starts converting your lean muscle into usable sugars and amino acids. And so the longer that you go in the morning without eating, the higher and higher your adrenaline and cortisol get. And it can get to such a bad state that you actually start to shake. You know, you've ever done that, and you start to get to around like noon or 1 and you start to like get shaky? That's because your cortisol expression is so high that it's actually disrupting your nervous system. And you know, and I did this for years. You know, I had body dysmorphia and eating disorders, and I didn't eat enough, and I worked out too much, and I would like not eat breakfast, and I would even have coffee or work out on an empty stomach. It is so bad for your metabolic health. It basically, and it also prevents you from like building muscle and doing the things that we ostensibly want to do with our bodies anyway. So yeah, so the reason that you don't feel hungry in the morning though is because these hormones very often suppress appetite, so that as an evolutionary human being, you can actually go and look for food while you're hungry. Because if you were just really in a lot of pain from being hungry, and that's why stress hormones are steroids. They help you deal with, they suppress pain so that you can be active when you are hurting anyway. And so, but then a lot of us take advantage of that when we have eating disorders, and we use it to skip calories, and you should not do that. And but also, actually, so Bev, that also brings me to another solution and issue. So that also happens if you have anorexia. Anorexia is also that state, but plus really high torporific hormones, serotonin and melatonin. And so a lot of people find it difficult to even eat, even though they want to and know that they need to. And this happened to me too. It's very, very difficult to make yourself eat if you're not feeling it. And so but because the reason that you're feeling that way are the high stress hormones, the thing that you should do to address a lack of a diet is to use things that activate cellular respiration. That will reverse the stress hormones and actually induce hunger sensations. So then it's easier and even more motivating to actually eat. And the three most useful ones of those are, first, sugar itself. So if you just like, drink some juice or something in the morning, that will start to lower those stress hormones and will actually increase your respiration rate. It'll actually increase your metabolic rate. And then that will trigger hunger impulses so that you then feel motivated to eat. Vitamin C also does that, because also these stress hormones cause us to lose vitamin C actually every night. So vitamin C maintains the metabolic rate, and because when we have high stress hormones, your body wants to lower the metabolic rate, the body automatically dumps all of the nutrients that promote and regulate a high metabolic rate. Because remember, like our body's response to stress is to conserve calories. So that's ironically why dieting doesn't work, is because your body freaks out when you starve it, because it knows that evolutionarily it thinks there's not enough food in your environment. So it wants you to live, because your body, believe it or not, actually loves you, or loves itself, and wants you to not die. So the way that it achieves not dying during starvation is to lower the metabolic rate and store fat. So in the morning, like, the way to reverse those stress hormones is to actually eat. And so vitamin C and sugar, and so like orange juice is like great. Like, just like if you just get up and drink a glass of orange juice, you can do that. You don't have to make yourself eat. Go have a glass of orange juice. In about 30 to 45 minutes, you'll start to get really fucking hungry, because the vitamin C and sugar both raise the metabolic rate and lower those stress hormones. It will then activate your hunger impulses. And that makes it a lot easier to eat. And I had to do that. I had to do that probably for like the first year and a half of my recovery, so that I could eat in the mornings, because I just didn't feel hungry. So, and the third one is actually niacinamide. So niacinamide also really strongly activates the metabolic rate and lowers torporific hormones. So you can take like, I don't know, 50, 100, 250 milligrams, 500 if you're very large. I would not do doses higher than 500 milligrams of niacinamide at a time, though. When you start to get around a gram of niacinamide, you can induce a migraine, actually. And it doesn't really benefit you to take really high doses anyway. Just a dose around 100 to 250 milligrams can activate your metabolic rate. And it lowers the torporific hormones very well. So and specifically, like if you have anorexia, niacinamide treats anorexia. So that can help you eat enough calories and actually feel hungry. So, am I familiar with Lisa Barrett Feldman and her work on fear and emotions? I am not. I didn't really look into that stuff specifically in other people's work, because I kind of stumbled on it on accident through my recovery in AA. What I did in AA worked so profoundly, and it wasn't even, and I'm not endorsing AA. I mean, it is helpful for people, but it also has like religious overtones. Some people have to go. I mean, I tried to help an alcoholic recently who just like, was just so self-reliant and refused to like do anything that I recommended. And that person will have to probably get sober the hard way and go into a recovery program. So it can be used, but my therapy was born out of that. I recognized an aspect in those recovery programs that helps to address psychological health. And then I further developed it after I realized how I had done it had made it work for me. And I'm also really skeptical of other people. I'm just really skeptical of the general psychology community's approach to therapy for fear and emotional stuff, because they don't, number one, they don't usually recognize the biological aspect of it. For some fucking reason, psychologists treat fear as if it's only in the mind and not entirely reliant on the endocrine system. I mean, it's really weird. Because psychology, it basically ignores the endocrine system and the effect of nutrition on and the endocrine system on those problems, they usually are not effective. They can do a little bit, like help alleviate, and it can be nice. It can actually relieve a little bit of your problems just to talk to somebody. But there's a whole aspect of actual physical biology that's in there. And I'm sorry if I'm assuming, Mike, that she's a psychologist. Maybe she does actually talk about this stuff, but I don't. The reason I didn't look into other people's work is because my work is actually the only one I know of that actually works. So yeah. Is social anxiety very different than shyness? No, they're kind of, yeah, the same thing. So shyness, so actually, I don't know if you guys might be aware of this, and I think some people are to a degree, but we often actually instruct other people how to treat us, actually. But we don't know that we do, actually. This is actually an aspect of human biology that is, and I say biology, this is not psychology, this is biology, this is instinct. This is how human instinct affects our experiences as individuals. Our instinctual biology is set up in such a way that our evolutionary purpose is more intended to sustain our species, not us as individuals. And we get that confused a lot, especially because a lot of our, the last, like, what, like 2 or 3 thousand years of human history has been focused on individuality. And don't get me wrong, I'm saying, like, we each as individuals are important. Our evolutionary biology, though, is less concerned with each of us as an individual, and it's more concerned with our survival as a group. So our instincts facilitate that. And this actually plays into political conflict as well. So, like, a lot of the unsavory aspects of human biology are actually intended as human human species survival strategies. Basically, evolution throws everything at the wall to see what sticks, and so anything that helps to perpetuate a species can be adopted as a characteristic of that species. And a lot of the unsavory things that human beings do are evolutionary backups to more effective evolutionary strategies. So, for instance, stealing, taking from other people, rape. Rape is a form of stealing. War, lying. Those are all, we possess all of those characteristics as a human being because they are part of our instinctual biology. Like, they are sort of backups to keep human beings alive at any costs, because nature is not concerned with your well-being as an individual. Now, you take a lot of antagonistic, hateful people, and they'll think that the victim is, say, for instance, the victim of a crime in that instance. But evolutionarily, the victim is not the victim of a crime. The victim is actually the person doing the crime. So, like, bullies, for instance, like, people who grow up being bullies, not bullied, but the actual bullies, they don't know what it's like to be happy and fulfilled. Like, that's why they bully. Like, bullies usually bully because they're being traumatized at home, or or other experiences, and they're not empowered with effective interpersonal skills, and they will often get into dead end social behaviors that constantly undermine social relationships and hurt themselves and don't benefit them. And that is an evolutionary instinct to try to dominate other human beings. It may perpetuate your genes, but at what cost? Like, you won't be fulfilled and happy, and you're burdened with, like, a lot of guilt at your own behavior. And so our biology is not necessarily concerned with our well-being, and we often actually project and tell people how to treat us. So shyness is actually a control mechanism. So, and I'm saying this as a person who was debilitatingly shy, like, just could not for the life of me project at all when I was younger if I wanted to. And because I'm also 6'7", I couldn't really hide. So like, I'd walk into a room and everybody would look at me. And because I was shy, it was horrible. And but what shyness does is shyness actually communicates to other people that you are insecure. So it is basically a message to tell other people that you're not comfortable being approached or engaged. So other people will do that. They will ignore you and not engage you because most people are actually nice. Most people actually don't want interpersonal conflict, and they do care about other people. And so if you come into a place and you're shy, other people will respect that signal and they won't approach you. And so then when I was shy, I couldn't understand why people wouldn't approach me. Like why I had such a hard time dating and finding people to date. I know people who are incredibly beautiful, but were so shy, like in high school, that people wouldn't approach them. And they thought that no one liked them and that they weren't beautiful because no one approached them. And especially because we have such a culture of validation where, you need people to be attracted to you or interested in you to find value in yourself. People can be confused, and shyness can actually work against your own interests. And it's because our behavior, our outward behavior, our body language, and our insecurities, so our insecurities actually get projected through our body language. And so if you're shy, like shyness is a way to manage social anxiety. So if you are a shy person and you feel anxiety in social situations, it's probably because you haven't had a lot of success in social situations and you feel insecure about yourself. But shyness is a control mechanism. It is a way to communicate to people that you are uncomfortable without actually having to say that. And other people do pick up on it. And part of the reason that you might not be finding success in situations like going to a party and talking to other human beings is because of your shyness. And which would ironically, probably get resolved if you had some success. But here's the thing is, here's the thing with how to address shyness. Addressing shyness, like I thought by pretending to be confident that it might help me. That's not what to do. Pretending to be confident is actually just arrogance. It is not confidence. You just need to. It's okay that you're shy. Like it's okay that social situations freak you out. like people can be jerks and psycho, and like it's totally fine to feel anxiety about social situations and to feel insecure. You don't need to not be insecure. A lot of people say the opposite, especially on social media. You got to be confident. There's nothing less confident than demanding that other people be confident. It's so fucking antithesis of confidence. Like those people are fucking stupid. Like it's okay to be insecure. It's okay to be shy. It's okay to not feel confident in yourself. It's totally fine. Yeah. Does freezing bread lead to bloating? No. I've never heard of that before. What's the idea behind that? Do people think that freezing bread leads to bloating? I don't see why that would affect it at all. Bloating is caused by pathogenic bacteria in your gut. That is all. What do I think of root canal treatments? Yeah, so, okay. Dentistry is very tricky because there are a lot of dishonest dentists in the world. So sometimes dentists will tell you that you need work that you absolutely do not need work done and will just take advantage of you. And on top of that, you lose teeth because of it. That being said, sometimes you do have to have teeth pulled or get root canals. I mean, some of you all let your teeth health go so bad that there's just no turning back. And all you can do is just salvage the situation. So my advice is to listen to your dentist, but get a second or even a third opinion before you get that. And before you get those procedures done, do the coconut oil swish 3 times a day for 2 weeks with a low dose of aspirin, either, baby aspirin or 1 aspirin every 2 days. That can help repair some of your cavities. And if you can make a recovery on some of your teeth, then you might not have to lose them. But that is not a guarantee, though. If the decay is too advanced, they're impossible to save, and you will have to get them out. And you should, if they do need to get out, then you should get them out, and then just take better care of your teeth moving forward. Um, but the key with dentists is to make sure that your dentist is honest. Go get a second opinion when you have to have serious tooth care done, or even a third opinion. Yellow, yellow, orange, dull skin. What's your thoughts? That's a very complex question. How yellow, orange are we talking about? I one time somebody messaged me and said that their skin was looking kind of orange. What could they do to treat it? Hi, Tara. Welcome. And I asked them, I said, are you sure that it's orange, or is it a little yellowy, you know? Because you could be having a liver issue like hepatitis or cirrhosis or something. And the person responded that their uncle had just caught hepatitis and they'd been around him. And so, and it was actually kind of yellow. So this person had actually caught hepatitis from a family member. Because you can catch hepatitis rather easily, actually. So if it's more of a greenish yellowy color, you might be having liver failure, and you might have hepatitis. And if you do think that if your skin is like that color, I would go get tested for hepatitis right away. Hepatitis can be very dangerous if you don't get it treated. My ex had a friend who died at 34 from liver failure from alcoholism, but he was only drinking beer, and he died because he had hepatitis, and his liver couldn't actually metabolize the alcohol that he was having, even though it was just like a beer or two a day, which is a lot, but a healthy person should be able to do that. I mean, a non liver cirrhotic or hepatitis person should be able to handle that much alcohol. He died because he had hepatitis and alcoholism at the same time. Oh yeah, so yeah, Care. So if you have a history of alcoholism and your skin looks yellowy and dull, you probably have liver cirrhosis. And I would definitely go get tested for hepatitis as well. And you can reverse cirrhosis actually with a lot of the info in my book if you treat your body right. I don't have a very specific advice because I reversed mine just over the course of my recovery. I probably, I use a lot of vitamin C and orange juice every day, and sun exposure, and using niacinamide and other B vitamins, and eating greens, like a lot, all the stuff that I did to recover on my metabolic health recovered my liver. And so, and I mean, and I don't drink, but I have like I drink probably like once every 2 or 3 months. But even when I did that, even when I first tried to go out drinking with some friends and I had like a beer, like my urine turned dark, and I still had liver cirrhosis at that time. But then it recovered after that at some point. So I don't know exactly what did. Yeah, Care. So even just avoiding alcohol won't necessarily heal your liver. Actually, I think so. I think that my family thinks that I got healthy just because I quit drinking. Like I literally, like my family doesn't respect my work. They only like 2 of them have read my book. Uh, and I mean, I have a huge family. And they often talk to me too like I'm stupid, which is really and really condescending. They're just condescending and controlling and really insecure. And but I think that they think that my health got better just because I gave up drinking. Like I literally think that's what they think happened. But like my health was so bad. And drinking alcohol, and anyone that's ever been in a recovery community will know that just giving up those substances doesn't necessarily make you healthy. There's a lot of people in the recovery communities that their health is shit. And yeah, so but the general outline of what I talk about in my book ended up curing my liver. And so you know, raising your metabolic rate in general, uh anything that helps with cellular repair, so like, and detoxification, so like vitamin C and sugar and sunlight and B vitamins, and like, you know, leafy greens with sulfur, so like brassicas, you know, all of those kinds of things could participate in liver recovery. The good sources of dietary fat like butter or coconut oil, olive oil for sure. Oh, anthocyanin and berries would probably help a lot, like dark colored berries, those kind of compounds, grape juice, raisins, um, those kinds of things would help a lot. Swiss cheese and blueberries have improved your sleep massively. Nice, good, yeah, great, yeah. So Swiss cheese would help populate your gut with healthy commensal microbes, and then blueberries are really high in anthocyanin, which also helps to promote commensal microbes, but also helps to improve your cardiovascular system. Been doing the vitamin C thiamine combo with carbohydrate, great relaxing buzz. That's really fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, hey, that was a really good stream. I'm going to end this stream and then I'm going to play Subnautica. So any of you who want to stay and continue chatting, can do so. I'm going to end this stream though and start a new one. So in a few minutes when I come back, I'll have another stream up. So you'll have to go back to my channel to look up for that one. Just so they're not in the same video on YouTube, because you can't like manually separate them. Oh yeah, you're on the other side of the world, Kara. I forgot. Thanks for coming by, Kara. Thank you guys for contributing and hanging out. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Liking videos and subscribing helps to promote the channel as well. Please share this with your friends and relatives. And you can follow me on Twitter. The links are on the About page on here. I'm going to add them to this description after I sign off. If you are following me on Twitter, I post notifications about streams there as well. Yeah, and if you want to and you can support this channel by signing up to my Patreon account, which is very helpful because I don't make a lot of money at this, and every little bit helps, and also when people buy books and stuff, that helps a lot too. So anyway, thank you guys for participating, and I will see you under the